All right. Well, good morning, everyone. We'll get started here. My name is Steve Kalina. I'm the President and CEO of the Minnesota Precision Manufacturing Association. We've got a great program today for you, but before we get started, I'll just do a couple bits of housekeeping. Some updates on things MPMA has going on. We've got our third cohort of the Skilled Training Academy kicking off in August. That's when it starts at Hennepin Tech. So if you've got any employees that you think would be a good fit, we generally want them to be signing up in the June, probably the May to June timeframe, so that they get a chance to get all their prerequisites done before the classes start. We got two cohorts going on right now that are very successful, and the students are doing really well. So if you have any interest in that or any questions, feel free to reach out. Some upcoming programs on May 18th, Federated is hosting a program on protecting your business related to distracted driving. June 9th will be our first, June 9th is a partnership with Printing Industry Midwest. They're putting on CPR training, so we're partnered with them to offer that to our members. June 10th is our first in-person meeting hosted by LB Carlson with a program for planning for profits on what you have. Attended that program in the past. It's an excellent program by Mel Anger at LB Carlson. June 17th, then we've got a summer social at the Lookout Bar and Grill. So it'll be our kind of our first social event that we've had in a long time. It'll be an outdoor event with live music and food. So looking to have a good time there. So, and then during the presentation today, of course, if you've got any questions, as Lacey mentioned earlier, you can use the Q&A function or the chat function. We'll be watching for those. If it's something pertinent to what we're covering at that moment, we'll maybe break in and ask the question, but otherwise we'll save it for a Q&A session at the end. But otherwise, of course, you all know we've got a key topic to cover today, and MPMA has been trying to delve more and more into the topic. We had a great program with the YMCA Equity and Inclusion Center last September, and trying to talk about it a little bit more and more because it's kind of a tough subject for manufacturers to solve. But we know that getting more diversity in our workforce is not just a desire anymore, it's an absolute necessity. So our main presentation today is on developing your talent pipeline from diverse communities. But first, we're going to have a quick bonus presentation from Elijah Norris Holiday, who is the founder of Project Restore Minnesota, an organization that provides support services to American descendants of slavery, so ADOS communities. Elijah does a lot of great things for the community, engaging especially with young people and kind of helping them figure out how to get things on track and make sure that they're healthy and financially secure as they launch into career paths. So I'm going to let Elijah take over for a little bit here, and then we'll get to our main presentation. Go ahead, Elijah.
Thank you, Steve, for the introduction. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Elijah Norris Holiday, and I'm the CEO and founder of Project Restore Minnesota. Before we begin, I'm going to start with a quote that my company lives by, I live by, and many people that I come in contact are starting to live their lives by as well. And it's really challenges us to change our frame of thought and how we see problem solving. And the quote is, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. That's become a Project Restore Minnesota motto. So again, my name is Elijah Norris Holiday, CEO and founder. I was born in the south side of Chicago in the Inglewood neighborhood, but I was raised in St. Paul with my father and my stepmother. I graduated with my bachelor's degree from Winona State University, where I pursued public administration. Now I am a MPA student at Mankato State University. I'm 2 classes away from finishing up my master's program, and my concentration is public budgeting and finance. Some of our current clients are Ramsey County County Manager's Office, Ramsey County Workforce Solutions Department. We do work with Ramsey County JDC. We do work with Ramsey County Racial and Equity Development Department, Hennepin County Workforce Development Department, Inequity, and we also do work with NEEKC Foundation. So Project Restore Minnesota was founded on June 16th, 2020 as a response to the murder of George Floyd. Just a little bit of a background story. I spent a lot of time protesting in the streets. I was an activist for years, even in college. And then I started to realize that I needed to do something different because I wasn't seeing the type of results that I wanted to see. So I formed this organization to be a resource, a support system for young ADOS men and women, 18 to 24, who are transitioning from teenagehood to adulthood. We specialize in professional development, personal development, job training, economic opportunities, and community engagement. So year to date, we have appropriated over $140,000 in stipends, rental assistance, tuition assistance, wraparound support. We pay for young people's phone bill if they can't make their phone bill payments. We help young people secure housing. We help them navigate the college admissions process. We're just an overall support system for people who lack that type of support. Our mission: Project Restore Minnesota is a youth-founded and youth-led private nonprofit social enterprise dedicated to providing various services to American descendants of slavery, organizations, communities, and youth. Our mission is to provide direct support services to American descendants of slavery, communities, youth across Minnesota, although we specialize currently within the Twin Cities area. Through youth-led organizing, Project Restore Minnesota uses strategic partnerships and community engagement to change the narrative of the past 400 years and reshape what the next 400 years will be for the ADOS community. And our overall vision is for American descendants of slavery. We'll have a level playing field where we are empowered and uplifted in our journey to navigate until we eradicate systems of oppression. Project Restore Minnesota wants to meet our youth where they are and provide them with as much guidance and support as they may need to be successful. So, types of services. So we established the fundamental political courses that inform ADOS youth about the policy processes, organizational dynamics of government entities, emphasizing professional development and advocacies in those areas. We work closely with Ramsey County and Hennepin County to include young people in the decision-making process. We're doing a lot of great things right now. There's a lot of great projects that are in progress that I think is really going to put young people at the table and keep them there. We stimulate direct economic development through subcontracting services out to independent freelancers and professionals within the ADOS community. And we will partner with small ADOS businesses to help them organize, market, and execute business plans. However, we do prioritize youth entrepreneurship, providing direct support to youth-founded companies and organizations. We're in the process of finishing the development of an app called MarketX, where there's a marketplace there, a job portal there. There's a space for them to receive supplemental education, mental health support, and much more. So this platform, young people can create a profile and they can market themselves, sell their products, offer their services to people in the community, and they can also receive education and mental health support as well through our platform. So our business model, we simply want to connect youth with jobs and opportunities through building strategic partnerships with schools, government entities, community-based organizations, and nonprofit organizations. Our young people who've been system impacted within the JDC facilities, community programs that currently exist, and building stronger relationships with employers and universities. So here's just an overview of our process. So once we connect with colleges and universities, government entities, and we find opportunities. I put MPMA in there because if you all have jobs and opportunities that you want to get to young people, it would be good for you all to connect with Project Restore Minnesota because we have access to over about 110 youth currently right now on our email threads and our text message threads, and also within our other networks of people that we have. And we connect them directly to those opportunities and jobs. And then from there, they become employed, empowered, engaged, and supported. So some key considerations and takeaways from this conversation is to be honest, open-minded, and intentional when building relationships with BIPOC communities, especially our young people. I think young people have just been so let down right now in society, and it's hard to trust people. So when you are interacting with young people, make sure that you're open-minded, that you're honest with them, very straightforward and intentional when you're trying to build those relationships. You'll get a lot more out of them and from the BIPOC community when you take that type of approach. I think that you all should prioritize building organic relationships with key influencers, stakeholders, and prominent leaders in the BIPOC community. There are people in our community where young people look up to them, other people in the community look up to them. If you can establish a strong relationship with those individuals, you can really strengthen your relationship with everyone else in the community. It kind of flows from those channels. And then reflect on your own internal policies and the culture within your organization, and just reflect on if it is an inclusive and welcoming environment. And if not, what can you all do internally to make it inclusive and welcoming? And then the last thing is get comfortable with being uncomfortable, it should say. And that's something that my dad taught me as well growing up, is that I've always been in positions where I was the only Black kid when I moved up here, because we started off in White Bear Lake. And he said, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's the only way you're going to grow. That's the only way you're going to learn. That's the only way you're going to become a better person. So I challenge everyone to just get more comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I'm going to end again with the quote from Albert Einstein, which I hope you all think about throughout this day and this week, is we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And here is how you can find us online at www.projectrestoremn.com. And we are also on Facebook, Project Restore MN. Thank you all, and I appreciate you all attending today's conversation.
All right, thanks, Elijah. Some great points, and obviously we didn't give Elijah much of a chance to do a full presentation here. But I met Elijah a few weeks back through a mutual acquaintance, and I was excited to just share an example of something someone's doing in the community. And Elijah's doing a great job. So I think it's great to learn about projects like this, programs like this, and figure out how we can get involved as well. I would probably get in trouble with Lacey if I don't mention that our golf tournament is officially open for registration. Actually, we're I think about 25% full already. That's for the end of July. So I hope you can consider making it for that. And we, of course, just like last year, have a safe, primarily outdoor event. So have a great time. And then, yeah, so I'll move into our main presentation here. So Dave Pearce, who is a member of MPMA with Education to Career Services, has been in the industry for 27 years in a number of different executive manufacturing roles, and now supports the recruiting industry with ZRG Partners. Dave focuses on connecting with young adults and helping them kick off their careers, and has a lot of engagement with diverse communities and connecting them with employers. So we're excited to have Dave with us today and share some of his insights. So we'll hand it over to you, Dave.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And thank you for, Elijah, your overview and intro today. Elijah and I were able to have breakfast yesterday, and I just got to say, you're a really impressive young man. And I learned a lot from our conversation, and I think you've got a bright future here in our community. So thank you for taking the time to meet with me, but also to speak today. I really appreciate that. For the audience that's on, if you could please consider interrupting as I'm speaking by sending questions in. Steve or some of the team will then highlight those for me, because I want to make sure that we're getting answers to all of your questions as quickly as possible, and that we can kind of pivot and ensure that we cover everything you'd like to cover today. So as background, so I'm like Elijah, I'm not a native. My wife and I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up in San Francisco. We moved here in 1991, just in time for the infamous Halloween snowstorm, which I think gives us some street credibility, even being kind of weak Californians and not used to snow. So we've been here for 30 years, raised our kids here. We've lived in Plymouth almost that entire time. And we had originally moved here to join Pillsbury. My first entree into really holding a P&L and being actively involved in manufacturing was running the Green Giant business. We had plants in France and Japan for our sweet corn products, and then in Eastern Washington State for asparagus harvesting, and then literally all over the Midwest from Idaho to Minnesota, Iowa, et cetera, for corn, beans, et cetera. So I spent a lot of time producing both fresh vegetables as well as flash freezing for Green Giant frozen products, which you're aware of. And then my last role before becoming an executive recruiter was in Brooklyn Park at a company called Leap. I don't know if anyone on the phone or on the call today has heard of that, but it was really an aspirational startup, an effort to stop the pollution related to creating the roads that we drive on. So you're probably aware that asphalt is one of the most widely used products on the planet for obvious reasons. And the process for that is to dig up sand and gravel, then mix that with crude oil, which is some of the most toxic that we produce, heat that. It has tremendous pollution into the air. and then to lay that down. And that's the way it's been going for decades. And so the idea here was to be able to dig up current asphalt, either your driveway, your street, or a city street, to crush it and then to microwave it. And so we had these 3 microwaves that were literally 60 feet long each. We put in a new emulsion, microwaved old asphalt, which came out in a more liquid form like what you see normally, and then to lay that down. So the idea was to be able to recycle basically across the entire earth asphalt. Unfortunately, the technology didn't work out over time, but again, a lot of application, literally working in the plant each and every day. So that's kind of the background in terms of my base in manufacturing. As Steve mentioned, so I'm founder of 2 companies, and then I'm currently an investor in ZRG Partners. So the 2 businesses, which really focus first, called E2C Services, that's Education to Career Services. That's a nonprofit that I set up. Our objective is to work with young men and women between age 18 and 25 in college. So we don't care if you're going to the U or to Normandale, doesn't matter. But our role is to help you find paid internships in line with your field of study. So if you want to be an engineer, you want to be in finance, you want to be in marketing, that's great. But let's figure out if you actually really want to do that when you're 20 instead of when you're 35. So we seek to get them into paid internships with Minnesota companies. That's our focus. And then give them a test drive during the summer for both the employer and for themselves. So that's the first business I started. That was about 7-8 years ago. The second is an executive roundtable for CEOs. And so I learn a lot from that as well, which relates to our conversation today. And then my day job is with ZRG Partners. We're a global executive recruiting firm. I spend all my time in the industrial space, and that kind of relates to our conversation today. So let me jump in and talk first about getting grounded in the facts about Minnesota demographics. So why is it so difficult to hire and to retain a diverse workforce in the state of Minnesota? Well, the facts are pretty glaring because you're not starting with a large pool of diverse employees and population. We are, last time I read, 88% Caucasian. That is one of the highest in the United States, particularly for a state of our size. What are we, 4.5 million, I think now. So, I'm sure Wyoming or Montana or somewhere may be more Caucasian, but they're, significantly smaller. So for, sizable states with sizable population, we do inherit as leaders of our communities a much larger portion of Caucasian residents than most states. We also have very cold weather, which of course and I only bring that up because I have talked to people in the southern United States and tried to recruit out of Florida and Southern California and Texas, and they're like, wow, I am not going to be able to get my spouse to move to the frozen tundra of Minneapolis. So again, you start with a couple of weather challenges, and then also just kind of basic demographics. So I think that's first thing to consider. But with those challenges in mind, why should you, as the leader of HR, of operations, of the general manager or running your company, why should you actually think about diverse hiring? And I think a lot of people start with the soft stuff. It's a great thing to do. You're helping build our community. I could go on for hours about that. But at the end of the day, while I appreciate that conversation, the reality is you are running a business to deliver profitability, grow revenue, to engage and motivate, train, and increase productivity of your employees. You've got a number of other objectives. if you've been fortunate enough to deliver a fairly good profit, perhaps you're donating money back into the community. So, you are doing a lot of things in running your day-to-day business. And I just don't think of running your company, that, you would have an obligation to do things just because it's a nice thing to do. Well, what's great about hiring diverse candidates is that it actually improves both your top line, your bottom line, and your engagement scores. So a little bit more detail on that. There's a couple of studies out there that caught my eye. I've held on to them for a couple of years now. But one that came out of Deloitte, you're probably aware they have an office here in Minneapolis, but they're a global audit firm. It states that companies with diverse workforces have a 2 to 3 time higher cash flow per employee. And so when you think about that, even if I run a small factory and I have, 18 to 26 people or so, I'm likely to improve the profitability and cash flow per employee if I'm not just sticking with hiring a more traditional workforce. The other thing to think about is engagement. So how happy are people? How enthusiastic, how connected are they to your company? And what level of team performance are you delivering? And there, again, was another study, this one by Gartner. They're a large survey company. You may have heard of them. And they found that team performance scores are 30% higher if you have a more diverse team. So again, traditionally, we might think of all white males in their 40s, probably in their 50s, with really fantastic, skill sets built up over 20, 30 years, everything from machinery, et cetera. And that's kind of what you have or what you have had. And so then the question again is, why would you change that? And I think those are two really important to the point facts. And again, just to repeat, because you can improve your revenue, your profitability, and your engagement. Let's ask why. Well, I'll share my opinion with you, which was not stated in the articles or the numbers I just quoted. And that is because I think, overall employees in a workforce that looks exactly like what they see in the mirror get a little bored with that. And so having more diverse and gender diversity in your workforce brings different opinions, different insights, new ideas, different ways to approach things. And it sometimes alleviates some of the competitive nature of us guys, which, we are guilty of. And so you bring all that together and you just end up creating a stronger team. And like I said, much better ideas. The other thing that it helps with, and again, so often it's hard to get started, but it also allows you to recruit a more diverse level of talent. So again, if I do hire, a couple African-American leaders, maybe I'm more male driven in our company, and now I bring in 3 or 4 females. Well, once you overcome and climb that hill and again, have a base, even a small base of diverse employees, it then becomes much easier to recruit diverse employees, which I'll speak to in just a couple of minutes. And I think that's really key because we are in a labor shortage, particularly for skilled labor across the entire United States. Minnesota is no different. And so we, if we can open up that aperture and be able to recruit a broader audience, we're going to have a much higher success in actually having a full cadre of employees to staff our facility. So those, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but I wasn't sure if you wanted to have your presentation up now, if you were speaking to slides specifically, but we don't have visual to it. So
no, I don't have any slides for the okay. Part that I was just talking about now.
Okay.
So I'm going to just finish this piece, this verbal piece, with a 6-step plan for hiring diverse talent. And then I'd like to show you where the rubber hits the road and give you some examples of how our firm has helped hire diverse talent in the Twin Cities. So first of the steps, kind of determine where to start in what type of role, or maybe board or advisor role, or even in contractual positions. So I bring that up because many of you, again, are running organizations. You have a leadership role in an organization, and the question and the difficulty and really where to get started on hiring more diverse leaders in your organization always comes up. Well, an easy way to do that, or an easier way to do that, is to think about advisors or board members. So this might be leaders with really strong industrial background. They actually may live in Kansas City, they may live in Des Moines, they may live in Atlanta, or they may live, in Dallas. And so they don't have to be full-time here, they don't have to live here, but they could be on your board of directors, which can be in person a couple times a year, can be video-based. And you begin the process of incorporating diverse opinions, backgrounds, more geographic dispersion, etc. And the cost of doing that is very low. There are boards in town that are, will pay board members, I don't know, $5,000 or $10,000 a year or something, and they attend 3 or 4 board meetings. So you can also do that by contracting with leaders for a 6 to 9 month period for various positions that are open. It kind of gives you a chance to test drive both for them and for you. And then of course you can hire for everyday roles. So kind of the ways that you can, where you can get started. Would suggest you define clear skills and attributes for each role. That's no different than normal hiring. Obviously, you want to provide clarity. You can choose to adjust and to accept less skills in certain areas and then overcompensate in others to balance it out. But obviously, you want to make sure that you and the hiring managers are very clear on the skills and the attributes. I'm not suggesting that you and your team may fall into this trap, but the studies do show that as human beings, we more often, given choices in a testing environment, will choose those that look, act, talk, and seem more like ourselves. And they call it kind of the hidden bias, and you've been again reading about it in the papers and seeing it on TV. It's just a natural thing. It happens. So the way to overcome that is to be very clear on skills and attributes and experience, so that again, people are looking past any kind of inherent bias that they may have. The next thing I would suggest is to handpick interviewers, discuss expectations, and think about aspects beyond the interview. So you do have a higher level objective here to build a higher productivity, revenue, and profit producing diverse workforce. And there are some people in your organization who, again, may be absolutely fantastic at what they do. They are not the right person to interview with an expectation of hiring more diverse talent. And so you'll want to think about that, and you will want to coach them on the fact that, we have a number of objectives here, the right person for the right job, skills and experience. We are also seeking to broaden and to be more diverse so that they know going in. The next point is onboarding and mentoring for success. So having one of your current people mentor, coach, advise a new employee, any new employee, but particularly when you think about diversity, is always helpful. And then I would say attention to detail. So what are the opportunities and issues? What are the explicit job responsibilities, and what are your expectations for the first 6 to 12 months? There's enough challenges, particularly if somebody moves in from out of town as a diverse candidate in joining your company. And let's make sure that there's also no confusion on what they're supposed to be doing and how. And then the last thing is to ask that new hire, and you could even during the interview process, would you be interested in helping us and helping the organization achieve more success in hiring diversity into our team? You're being open and honest, you're being authentic, you are asking for their help, you are admitting that you may not be where you want to be today. All of that is fantastic. It's a great way to start a relationship because it's based on honesty, it's clear, again, as I mentioned, it's authentic, and you're soliciting help and support. And I think by simply asking the question or engaging a candidate, you're also implying, gee, we're just not where we need to be today. And so if you were to consider joining our organization and doing your job, et cetera, that's fantastic. Thank you. But would you also consider taking on this additional higher level task? So, okay, so that's kind of all the information in terms of background, how to approach, why, when, how, with who. What I wanted to do is give you a couple of quick details on things that we've executed against that might be helpful to you as you think about, again, hiring in Minnesota. Steve, can you see the screen?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just going to spend a couple seconds on this. So, what we can't do as recruiters is share confidential information. And so I can't talk to you today about a manufacturing company because they might be a competitor of yours and they would be sensitive to me talking about a job, compensation, candidates, et cetera. So I apologize for that. I hope you understand. So what I've done here is picked a financial services organization. It happens to be in Minneapolis, downtown Minneapolis. And their objective, again, was to hire a board of directors, a more diverse board of directors. And through that, what they were hoping to do was to gain additional outside input, technical competence. So really around technology, implementation of new ERP systems, maybe SAP, Oracle, or some of the other systems that you might be thinking about to improve productivity in your plant. Those things would definitely apply, even though, again, this is a financial services institution. Okay, so first and foremost, the job spec. Again, this is for board of directors, but this could apply to any role in your company. Let's not just, put it out there and or just spread the word amongst ourselves that A, we're hiring, but B, we're looking to do more diverse hiring. That's just not going to go anywhere. So let's start with a quality document that talks about who we are. In this case, the company was called Spark. What are we all about? Which again kind of brings it to life. You can see here about Spark. We're a fintech leader supplying, software as a service, et cetera. And again, you would describe the things that you do in your company, maybe the customers that you have. We usually put in a video link. You can see here, like how Spark works for you. Again, they do, Spark is background. They work with the Small Business Administration nationally, the government agency, to help loan money to small businesses. That's what they do. And they do that through a software. And so then we talk about who are their target customers. Again, that's something you could very easily do. And then we talk about what kind of services the company has, services or products. Again, you would do the same thing. And then we get to the position. And the reason I think this is critical is because it brings the whole thing to life. It talks about your manufacturing of products or services, your customers, what you're all about, your culture, gives you a chance so that when you do send this out and you do introduce it to candidates, diverse or non-diverse, again, it brings it to life, and it looks that it demonstrates that you've really thought this through. This is not somebody quit on Wednesday and we're hiring on Thursday, which of course does happen. But even when it does happen, let's do a good job at it. So position description, again, you'd fill in, with all the items that are important to you, but, operating with personal integrity. They're effective. They understand, control processes, regulation, risk management. In this case, it was around software, et cetera. What are their qualifications? We want somebody 10 years with technology background, prior experience in a nonprofit board was one of their things. A leader who brings energy and enthusiasm. Attributes, we want somebody that's confident, strong business acumen, highly creative, continual learner, demonstrated, good interpersonal kind of team skills, at the board level. And then we always put in who's the hiring manager. This happens to be a gentleman that some of you may know named Frank Altman. He's been in the market for 40 years, great leader. We try and bring, again, who are you going to report to life so that they understand that person and their background. Who the other key executives, like you can see here, Nick Elders, he's the CEO of this organization. And then just a simple, 1, 2, 3 paragraph. Why is this role compelling? And of course, you would fill that in or work on that. If they're moving in from out of town, which you will see if you have a really concentrated, focused effort to hire more diverse employees, again, back to the 88% number I quoted to start, you may be recruiting people that are coming from other cities or certainly outside of downtown Minneapolis, the Twin Cities metro. And so just putting in a little blurb about who we are, our city, our town, et cetera. And then I'd set an objective for yourself, which we always do. And, we're going to start this on, May 25th, and then we hope to finish this up, within about 90 days, which ended up being in July. And those are good goals to set for your internal team. So I'm not going to walk you through, all these candidates, but just to give you a flavor of what we're seeing, who in this particular case we talked to, why that's important, I thought I'd just kind of show you some profiles. So this gentleman is named Jim Anderson. He actually works for Google in the Google Cloud. So obviously highly technically competent. He's been in business for 34 years. So again, we never talk about age, but I'm guessing he's probably mid-50s. He's worked for accounting firms, HP, Cisco, and now more recently Google. He's got a good education. He's been on a number of boards, really fun stuff, like even including the US Olympic Committee and things down that line. Make-A-Wish Foundation, which you probably know, we also have one of those here in town. Talks about his strengths, where he can bring innovation to you and your company. And then we kind of write up, what we've learned from him in the interview. And then, give you a little bit more detail on that. Your HR team can obviously do this. If you do ever use an outside recruiter or somebody like our firm, this is the kind of, information that you get. But again, there's no reason that you would have to employ an outside search firm. You've probably got HR folks that'll do it. Copy of Jim's resume, which kind of gives you everything that you may need to know about him and kind of his background. And then, again, I won't go through any more candidates, but there's 8 candidates on this list. There were 4 females and 4 males, very diverse group of leaders. So one of the female leaders they hired, and again, we all hear the term African American. Well, as Elijah talked before, that actually may not be a valid description of the person that you're describing or talking to. In this case, it was very pertinent. She actually was born in Kenya. She's about 34 years old. Her parents immigrated from Kenya to the United States. She describes herself as an African American. So it was appropriate to talk to her using that term. And again, she's a first generation immigrant from Africa, well educated, has done fantastic, works for Cisco out in the Bay Area. She's one of the 3 females that they hired for this board group for Spark. So anyway, I'm going to pause there. Again, you've kind of seen today, hopefully you've heard today, why you would consider this, how, the tactics in terms of very specific things you would need to do, job description, interview expectations, the right people to be involved in the interview process, defining your larger objective. It's not just to hire for this role. We're seeking to broaden and to be more diverse as a company. The reasons we're seeking to do that are increased revenue, profitability, and engagement. And then, walking that talk as the leader in your organization, I think is all key. Obviously, having a job description that talks about you as the hiring manager or whoever is, your company, the products and services, how long you've been in business, what's critical, what your mission vision is, where you're located. Again, it could be in Rogers, it could be in Bemidji, it could be anywhere, having a picture of that as well. And then defining specifically what the job requirements are, the experiences, and what's needed. And then again, using your internal HR team, your leaders to source candidates, considering hiring an outside recruiting firm to do that. And in any case, you can either hire full-time employees, you can start with contractors for a test drive. You can also hire at the advisor or board member for very little expenditure, which could give you a fast and a running start into this objective. So thank you. Thank you again for everybody that's dialed in and listened today. Happy to pause there. And Steve, if you've seen any questions or if you have any that you'd like me to answer, I'd be happy to do so.
And I've got a question for, I guess either you or Elijah could both chime in on it, but, as you cited earlier, vast majority of Minnesota is still Caucasian, at least in the adult demographic, I think. But, my church that I grew up in is in Northeast Minneapolis, but it's a Russian Orthodox church where there's no, people of diversity. In the neighborhood I'm in, I live in Andover. It's a pretty Caucasian neighborhood, community. Well, the city is. I've got, a couple African-American neighbors, but I mean, I don't. And then, of course, in the industry and manufacturing, I've grown up around a lot of white, Caucasian men in machinist type roles. A lot of the challenges we face as manufacturers is just even getting connected to those communities, let alone getting the chance to hire from diverse communities. Do you guys have any recommendations without literally, for me personally, like, well, do I go knock on the neighbor's door to make a point to go introduce myself to a family of color? I mean, that just, that doesn't seem the appropriate next step, but are there ways that you guys recommend for companies to be able to connect with those communities, get to better know and better understand those communities, and engage with them without forcing it?
Elijah, did you want to start or have me jump in?
Yeah, I can chime in quickly. I think, Steve, what you're doing right now is an example, right? You met me, we talked, you invited me at last minute to come, do a short presentation about my company and what we do. And we have 11 folks on the call who've never heard of me before, or probably my organization who's now been introduced to me. And I'll leave my contact information as well in the chat. I'm always willing to meet up with people and get a cup of coffee or to get some lunch and to talk about what my community is experiencing and how my organization has been tackling some of those issues. And the other part is just making yourself available and being present in these different spaces where there are people of color, and just be showing up and be willing to listen. I think a lot of times when people show up to those types of events, they come willing to talk and wanting to talk, but sometimes just listening, you can learn a lot more. So just showing up to those spaces, be willing to listen and then to engage when you're engaged, and just being intentional with what you're trying to accomplish and achieve.
One thing Elijah and I talked about a few weeks ago when we chatted too, and this is just more of a recommendation, I guess, for those on the call. If if you haven't heard of it, the YMCA has their Equity and Inclusion Center at their downtown Minneapolis location. It's called the Equity Innovation Center. If you ever get a chance to go, we actually held an event there last September, and I had been there once previously with another organization. But if you get a chance to go personally or set up a training session with your employees, but it's an amazing resource, and they've got a really cool, I can't remember what they call the room that you go into, but it's kind of an immersion room where you basically get exposed to a lot of different concepts and kind of explore your own, as Dave put it, mentioned the biases that, kind of understanding how we look at things and look at people. So I would recommend you all looking into that. Again, the YMCA Equity Innovation Center. It's a fantastic resource. It really, really changed the way I looked at things and going to help me have more meaningful and I don't know if they're smarter conversations, but at least like Elijah mentioned, just having those conversations. So, all right. Any other questions anyone has? You can, again, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A. So you said just having these conversations, do you have, what would be next steps? For a manufacturer, what, other than you, Elijah, or you, Dave, are there other community resources that are specific? Should they reach out to DEED? Should they, or the Department of Labor? Should they reach out to, do they just Google community, if they're in, especially, some of the companies on here are from outstate Minnesota. Did they just Google community or community organizations in Brainerd, Minnesota? How do they go out seeking out resources like you guys?
I'll be happy to jump in. I was just going to add to what Elijah noted and Steve noted. The other source are colleges and universities. So reaching out to Normandale, reaching out to the U in Duluth and St. Cloud and the Twin Cities. You can just speak to their recruiting department and just share with them what you're trying to accomplish. We're looking for this type of skill set or skill sets, meaning, maybe in human resources, in finance, in, and then machinists and other things. Here's what we're looking for. We are seeking to broaden the diversity within our workforce. And we're, for example, thinking about starting a couple of paid internships for this summer as as a starting point. We also have a couple of full-time positions that may be coming up in the next couple of weeks. What can you do to help me?
And if I can just elaborate briefly on that, Dave, reaching out to the student bodies there, the student senate bodies there, and also the inclusion and diversity offices. I used to work for Students United as their inclusion and diversity specialist, and I served as their vice chair and treasurer. And we used to always have folks come in and present to our student council about different job opportunities, internships, and just networking opportunities that they wanted to include people of color and more diverse populations of folks. So I know for sure every Minnesota State University, that's a public institution, has an inclusion and diversity specialist there that works for Students United, and they have an inclusion and diversity committee. So if you reached out to the university, just ask to speak with someone in the inclusion diversity office, or ask for the student body president, and they should be able to refer you to someone who handles all the inclusion and diversity works on the campus. So that could also be another resource for you all too.
That's a great point. And I think one of the things that we've been trying to, I mentioned earlier about our training academy, and I tell everyone that's not even so much about the curriculum or the training itself, but about establishing training programs and the ability for small companies to hire apprentices and people that don't have the technical background. Well, that's one of our challenges in connecting with diverse communities, is if they don't have that connection to manufacturing, if they don't have that skill set yet. Like my shop, we always had to hire top talented tool makers that we really needed 10 years of experience to even start working on our stuff. How do you hire someone with no experience? Well, you have to then develop internal training and collaborate with the schools. So I think that's key, is not even so much focusing on the diversity itself, but how do you open the doors and the opportunities, allow for diverse communities that don't have those connections to our industry. So that's kind of what MPMA's stance is how do we, instead of focusing, because we still don't know the answer to the diversity and the question, but how do we at least make it, take down some of those hurdles and make it a little easier for us to engage different communities. So hopefully everyone, I think most companies have some initiatives along those lines, and just finding more ways to open those doors. So, well, if we don't have any other further questions, I think we can wrap it up. And I thank you both for your presentations and the information, and a lot of great things we need to be thinking about and keep working on. And as Elijah put the Einstein quote a couple times, we got to be solving problems, that thinking a little different going forward, and not trying to solve them with the way we used to think. So appreciate everyone's attendance today and taking the time. Appreciate your time, Elijah and Dave, and look forward to seeing you all again, hopefully in person soon. And in the meantime, take care and stay safe and healthy and busy.
Thanks, Steve and Lacey.
Thank you.